All right, it's 101. No more waiting. For those of them who come in late, we will shame them when they arrive. All right, so again, I think that everyone can hear me. If you can't, drop it in Q&A that you can't hear me. And if you can't see my screen, let me know, but everyone should be good. So today we're going to be talking about the intake playbook. And I've done some iterations of this before, but what I like about this webinar that I put together for you today is my hope is that it will be such a black and white process that you can set the benchmarks for this process with someone you trust in the firm. And this should be able to be handed off to somebody like your receptionist or somebody that you hire to fill this role, because this is a key role in your firm. I would say that most of the problems firms have when it comes to closing leads is because of this problem here. So the tips, tricks, data gathering stuff I'm going to give you in this webinar, I think are going to be extremely helpful. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the goal of this session is to give you a defined intake process that you can create SOPs around. And for those of you that don't know what SOPs are, those are standard operating procedures and KPIs. So that way you have key performance indicators that you can hold people accountable to. It's very black and white. And this is going to make doing intake and managing intake way easier for your firm. So again, a lot of goals here, but I think that we can easily accomplish these things. So here's the agenda. I'll just run through it pretty quickly and we'll get into each one of these items. So we're going to talk about intake versus appointment setting. We're going to talk about intake's job, the metrics that need to come from intake, because it's not just simply intake. It's a lot more in depth than you think. We're going to talk about scorecards and how to create one. And I'll show you an example of a scorecard. We're going to talk about benchmark numbers that you should be getting from your intake team. And then we're going to talk about how to manage your CRM in under 10 minutes, unless you have hundreds and hundreds of leads. All right. But most of the time you should be clearing your CRM out every day. And I'm going to show you the process that I actually go through that I've refined over the years of how to manage your CRM. All right. So the process that I'm going to show you is super simple, but sadly, most of you will not do it. All right. I know that's kind of harsh and that's mean to say, but the reality is if you actually do what I show you here today, you will crush your competition and you will crush your revenue goals. And I put a picture of Warren Buffett there because whenever people ask him about investing advice, he just says, buy low, sell high, which is super simple, right? But it's not easy like most things in life. If you want to lose weight, everybody knows what to do, right? You diet and exercise. It's very simple, but it's not easy. And the reason that this process is really simple is because it only takes a few steps. The reason it's not easy is because it requires consistency, and consistency is really hard for people. So again, if you do what I show you here today and you manage these metrics and you do everything I say, even probably 80% of what I say, it will have a dramatic impact on your closing rate and your revenue. I can't drill that into your head more than I already have. So let's get into that stuff. So first, I want to talk about intake versus appointment setting. There's nothing wrong with the word intake, but it does not have a sales connotation to it. It usually means take phone calls and who gives a crap what happens to that call. And that is kind of the expectation that is set for the receptionist or the intake person. It's not necessarily a sales job in their mind. And so they don't have a sales hat on, they don't have a sales personality, and they don't treat each call as if it's a sales call. And so when you're talking about intake to your employees, you should almost start calling it appointment setting. I don't want to change the industry term, but appointment setting is a much better term because an appointment setter is an active sales role. And the person in charge of chasing the person is in charge of chasing that lead down until the appointment is attended. And the reason I put a picture here of my dog, it's actually Axel here, he's in the corner of my room, is when I play fetch with Axel and I throw a ball, I think he would literally run off of a cliff to get the ball. That's how focused he is on the ball. And that is how your intake person / appointment setter needs to be with the leads. They need to treat each lead like it's a piece of gold and they will chase that thing off a cliff. Because in reality, in other industries where appointment setters are the term that's used and appointment setters are actually very highly compensated roles, they chase their leads down, they reactivate their leads, they work their leads to the bone. And the reason I know that is A, I'm in programs that teach people how to do appointment setting, closing programs. And B, I've been a lead for appointment setters and I get calls, email, texts from people from years ago because the appointment setter is assigned the lead and they're responsible for the outcome of that lead. So when you're dealing with intake, you want to think of intake not as just, hey, let's take the phone calls coming into the firm and whatever happens, happens. No, let's take the phone calls coming into the firm and treat every phone call, if it's an active lead, like it's worth $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, because ultimately it could be, right? If you close these people and you have a higher ticket practice area, that lead is worth a ton of money. So if you get everybody on board with that mission and everybody on board with the language of an appointment setter, they now are in the role of appointment setting, not intake. I know that that's not really much of a distinction, but it's a huge distinction in how they handle and treat the lead and how they handle each phone call. All right. So super important distinction there. Now, these are intakes activities, and there's a lot of weight that is carried with these activities. So first is we want to answer every call, right? That should be almost table stakes. I heard that term and I really like it. Is when you get to a poker table, there's the ante, or you get to a blackjack table and it's a $25 minimum, it's table stakes, right? You're not betting anything below $25 on blackjack. If it's a busy night, they raise table stakes to $50. Every hand's $50. Table stakes for the law firm in order to compete is you got to answer every call, right? That's the minimum, the bare minimum you have to do in order to compete with bigger firms or your competition. Now, there are some implications to answering every call. So you have a better chance of closing people. An example of this is, let's say your AC breaks down, which happened to me recently. And I called a few companies. The people who didn't answer, guess what? I went right down the list of Google and found somebody who answered. They had a better chance of closing me because they got to the lead first. So speed to lead is essential, which is why answering every call is huge. It's also a great start to the relationship itself. So if you don't answer the call and you have to kind of the person has to chase down the law firm, it's not really the greatest start to the relationship. And you've already kind of heard it a little bit. Like, are these people reliable? Are they going to be there for me if I need them? Especially if you're in a really needy practice area. So starting the relationship off on the right foot is huge. And one of the biggest things is answering every call so you can gather data on the leads. Right. And we're going to get more into gathering the data here in a bit, but gathering the data is huge because if you are not gathering data on every lead, you're not going to be able to steer your marketing in the right direction. So again, answering every call has a lot of implications, and that is one of the biggest ones. Obviously, closing is another big one. They're all very important. And then the next thing is the intake person at your firm should be managing your pipeline, and they should be clearing the pipeline daily. And don't worry if you don't know what that means. I'm going to show you what that means. So here's intake's goal with the pipeline. And I know I've said pipeline a lot. All a pipeline is a sales view of all of your leads. So in the pipeline itself, you'll have a new lead category. You'll have a marketing qualified lead. You'll have an appointment set stage. You'll have an appointment attended stage, and then you'll have a closed or signed stage. So that way you can keep track of all your leads and where they're at in the sales process. If you don't have a pipeline set up, I'm going to show you one later in this webinar, but you definitely want to have a pipeline. It is the best way to organize your leads. Every sales organization does this. So there's a lot of stuff out there on pipelines if you don't know what it is and you want to look into it. And I talk about it a lot in all of our webinars. So the intake's goal with the pipeline is, again, you want to think of them as an appointment setter, and their job is to get as many appointments as possible, right? We want to obviously get good appointments, but we want to set as many as possible. So the numbers or the stages that an intake person is responsible for are these stages here. So they're responsible for all the new leads coming into the firm. And their goal is to move these leads to the right of the pipeline, getting them closer and closer to payment and signed. So this little view I have here is essentially a pipeline. So what they're going to do is they're going to work all of the leads, and then they're going to determine, are they MQLs or are they marketing qualified leads? Now, the reason this stage is really important is because it helps you dial in the marketing without any opinions on the leads. What a marketing qualified lead is, or at least how we like to define it, is just one or two parameters on if the lead is qualified to work with you. And the best way to do this, depending on if you're like a divorce firm or DUI firm, I'll use DUI as an example, is do they have a DUI? So yes or no, that's very easy to answer. And are they in your jurisdiction? So you can't really fudge those two metrics. They're either binary. It's yes or no, they have a DUI, and yes or no, they're in your area. So that would define a marketing qualified lead, because technically, maybe that person's crazy, but technically they can actually work with you. Now, again, finances and all that other stuff are different metrics that we would look at later, but can they actually work with you and can you actually help them? The answer is yes, if they have a DUI and they're in your jurisdiction. So that takes the leads from leads to marketing qualified lead. Now, from marketing qualified lead, a certain percentage of those people are actually going to book an appointment, or they're going to get their appointment set. So the intake person is responsible for every one of these stages so far in tracking all of this data and moving the lead over in the pipeline and obviously following up with these people. Now, a certain percentage of the people who set an appointment are actually going to attend their consult. And now that is no longer on the intake person's plate. That is on a closer or a non-attorney salesperson or the attorney themselves, right? Intake has done their job. They've got them to the appointment. Now, the percentage of people who do not attend their appointment or their consult are going to go to their appointment miss stage. And here, what's going to happen is the intake person is now responsible for this lead again and getting them back on the calendar, back to a closer or a non-attorney salesperson or the attorney themselves. So they're responsible for 4 stages in the pipeline. All right. And this is very, very black and white for them. They know that if the leads are in these stages, the lead is theirs. It belongs to them. They need to be working the lead every single day until they get over to the consult attended stage. After that, someone else should be following up with that lead, ideally a salesperson. So again, the job of the intake person is managing these stages. And don't worry, I'm going to break these stages more down for you more later on when I get into the pipeline view, but I just want to show you high level. Now, these stages also give us feedback as to what's happening in the firm. And each one of these stages is really important because all of these stages drive our closing rate and our overall revenue generation from our marketing campaigns. So the lead to marketing qualified lead stage, this lets us know if our marketing is dialed in. Again, the way you define an MQL is with black and white parameters. For example, DUI in jurisdiction. And what this tells us is our marketing doing really good or is our marketing really bad? So for example, let's just say that our lead to MQL rate was like 30%, meaning 30% of all the leads coming into the firm are not qualified to work with us. Well, that means we have a hell of a problem in our marketing because most of the people coming in are not even in our practice area. So what is going on? Is it our keyword strategy? Is it our targeting? Is it our platform? Is it a whole host of things that can go wrong? And so this feedback is especially important if you're working with a marketing team or you have an in-house team. This is how you judge their performance is, do you have a good lead to MQL rate? If you have an MQL rate of like 70 and above or 80 and above, you're starting to get into the realm of most of your leads are qualified and most of them can actually work with you. But again, if you're getting below that 50% mark, depending on what the channel is, you're starting to have some problems. So that stage is really, really important for dialing in your marketing. Now, the MQL to consult set stage, this stage lets us know the set rate. And this is an important number to hit our goals. So if you're not setting enough consults, you really can't hit your goals. If this number is low, you probably need to start listening to phone calls and start seeing why are we not getting more appointments set. The target set rate should be 70 to 80%. So 70 to 80% of your MQLs are setting an appointment and they're on the calendar. All right, that's an important metric. And again, all these metrics are going to drive our revenue generation, which I'm going to show you in a calculator here in just a few slides. And then the next number is consult set to consult attended rate. So this tells us the quality of the sets. And the target for this should be 70 to 80%. So 70%, 70 to 80% of the people who are booking on your calendar need to show up to their consultation. The other reason I like to break these stages down is you can manipulate all of these numbers. So if we're having problems in any one of these stages, there are ways we can fix these problems, which is why we want to examine these numbers. Because if we're having issues, we can text the leads, we can call the leads, we can send reminders, all kinds of tricks we can use to get these numbers up to benchmark. And then the last one is consult attended to consult close. So this should be in the 30 to 50% range. Some people are higher. But again, this is where you're actually closing the lead and they're paying and becoming a client. So those are the stages that we need to worry about. And again, each stage tells us something and each stage can be manipulated so we can make more money off of our marketing. Really important stuff here. So this is how to manage your intake / appointment setter. So the KPIs that they're going to be responsible for, and the reason I like having them responsible for numbers is it's very black and white. So once we start managing this person and the numbers are starting to get tracked over weeks and months, it's very easy to see, are they performing or aren't they? And it sounds bad, but people will almost fire themselves because it's like, look, I just can't do this. This is not for me. So it's really nice to have this because it's black and white. There's no like, hey, I don't think you're doing that great. And then they can argue with you. It's like, look, what's your set rate? What's your show rate, et cetera, right? So these are the KPIs that we want to manage them to is MQL tracking. They're not completely responsible for MQL. That's more on marketing side. The set rate. So they need to be setting a certain amount of appointments, and then the show rate. Because again, they need to be responsible for the reminders, making sure they're showing up. And if they're not showing up, getting them back on the calendar so that they do show up. If they're in benchmark, then they're doing great. They're doing their job. Everybody's happy, right? And then their daily tasks. So what is this person doing on a daily basis? They're answering all the calls. Again, that's kind of table stakes. They're dialing all the forms, ideally within 5 minutes. So everyone who fills out a contact form on your website should be getting dialed. So called within 5 minutes. Studies show that after 5 minutes, that number starts to drop off as far as connection rate. The person has already moved on, or they just forget why they've even reached out to you if you're waiting days. So that's a big, big one right there. And then clearing the new lead pipeline stage, which again, I'm going to explain when we go over the pipeline. And then the last one there is FUs. I know that sounds funny, but make sure they're doing their FUs, which is follow-ups. So are they following up with people to remind them that their appointment is tomorrow? Are they following up with people to say, hey, you missed your appointment. Can I get you back on the calendar today or tomorrow? So those FUs will start to pile up because a lot of people won't show and a lot of people will just not answer. So you have to follow up with the leads in your pipeline. So they have a full plate here, right? This is literally a job. An appointment setter is a complete job all by itself. And like I said, in other industries, it actually pays very, very well. So how can you put a process in place so that managing this person is black and white? And this is where we're going to talk about the scorecard of their metrics. And we're going to track this on a weekly basis. This is where we get into a little bit more nitty gritty, but the data gathering here is super important because this tells us, are we on track or off track for our goals? So now we're going to go into the scorecard part of this presentation. I'm going to show you what a scorecard looks like. Then I'm going to show you the implications of hitting your numbers and not hitting your numbers. And then we're going to do a pipeline demo of what a pipeline looks like and how you actually manage it, how this person should manage it. All right, so let me go over here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. All right, so this is what a scorecard looks like for an appointment center. And I've grayed out the sales part here because they're not responsible for sales unless you have a person who's the salesperson and they're setting their own appointments and they're doing the sales. That's a lot to do though. So the numbers that they're responsible for keeping track of are the number of leads coming into the firm, the number of MQLs, so that's marketing qualified lead, the number of appointments that they're booking, and the number of appointments that are being attended. So these are their metrics, right? These are black and white numbers. We can't fake these numbers. And this is how we judge their performance. Now, the big thing here, yeah, I can send you a copy of this. If you want a copy, put your name in this Q&A and I will email it to you. Actually, what I'll do is when I send this recording out, I'll put this sheet in there and you can make a copy of it. So if I'm filling out this scorecard, which we actually do every single week for our business as well, we don't only do it for sales, we do it for other pieces of the business, is you do it on a weekly basis, because if you wait till the end of the month, you've now wasted a whole month where you could have got back on track if you were far off track. So what will tend to happen is you may have a really bad week and you're like, well, what the heck happened, guys? Everybody gets kicked back into gear. And now week 4 or week 5 is even better. So it's really important to do it on a weekly basis because it's a leading indicator as to, are we on track for our goals or are we way off track? Because again, we measure everything in quarters and we want to make sure that every single week counts, especially if we have very aggressive revenue goals. So in week 1, I'll just show you an example of what this would look like. We got 30 leads, 29 of them were MQLs, right? We're doing really, really good. We're pretty happy with that. We got 13 appointments booked and we had 5 people attend. All right, so we're tracking this and we know our benchmarks before this, which we'll get into in just a second here. Week 2, we're looking good. Leads are down a little bit. We got 20 leads. We got 18 MQLs, 10 appointments booked, and 8 people actually showed up. Week 4, 25, 24, 15 to get the idea. So these are our totals. Okay, so we had 90 leads, 85 of them actually were MQLs, 40 of them booked an appointment, and 25 of them attended. And let's just say we closed 10 people, right? Because everybody wants to know, what do we close? Because that's exciting. Now, what are these rates and what do they look like? So in the beginning, right, we have a 96% MQL rate. Really high. It means we're getting all quality leads for the most part. 44% of them are booking, 38% of them are showing, and we're closing at 40%. So not a strong number, not a strong number, strong number, strong number. Our totals look like this. And don't worry, I'm going to show you the implications of these numbers here in a second, which you're going to be like, wow, we need to look at these numbers. So that means we have a 94% MQL rate in this example. We have a 53% appointment book rate. We have a 52% show rate and a 40% close rate. All right. So those are the numbers. What the heck do they mean now? So this is a simple calculator that I put together just for this, so you guys can see the implications of these numbers. So in this example, we have 100 leads in the firm. We have an 80% MQL rate, which means that 20% of our leads are not qualified leads. They don't have a DUI and they're not in our jurisdiction, one or the other. 80% of the people are booking with us. 80% of them are showing, and we're closing 30% of them. And let's just say that we have a case value of $5,000, right? In this example, our closing rate is 15%. And how I arrive at that 15% is all of these numbers times each other will equal 15%. Now, what that means is that we have 80 MQLs, right? 100 times 80%. We have 64 appointment set, which is MQLs times our 80% appointment set rate. 51 of the people showed up, and then 15 of them closed, which is $76,000 in revenue, right? Not a bad month. We're looking pretty good. Now, let me show you what some rates look like depending on how you have your firm set up, or even if you're tracking these numbers. So we're going to leave the MQL rate the same. Let's just say that the marketing hasn't changed, but let's just say that our booking rate is 50%. You can see what a dramatic impact that has on revenue right off the bat. We only shaved 5% off our closing rate, and that dropped about $20,000, $25,000. Now, let's just say that we're not doing a good job following up these leads and making sure they show up. Let's just say that they're showing up at 50%. That shaved a cool 46 grand off of our total before, and we haven't even changed our closing rate. So we only manipulated 2 numbers and it cut our revenue in half. Now you're probably thinking, okay, it's fun to play games on spreadsheets, right? Because spreadsheets are always cool when you can build up a nice looking performance, that you're going to hit for the year. But these numbers are a reality and they do change every single week. So the good news is if we're off track, for example, on our scorecard here, which is 53%, 52%, 40%, 94%. I'm going to punch these numbers in for you really quick. They'll be pretty close. So this is a raw closing rate of 11%. We're at $52,000 in revenue. Now, let's just say you can get this up to benchmark, which I like to say is around 70%. Our show rate is at 70%. And I say if you can close at 30%, you're doing pretty good for yourself. Now we're back at 70 grand, right? These are metrics that I know firms are hitting right now. And that's only a raw closing rate of 14%. Some firms close way higher than this, like 20, 30, 40, even 50% in some practice areas. So again, the numbers are a huge part of the success of your firm. And most people know that these numbers even exist within their overall closing rate, right? They just kind of monitor like, yeah, I got like X amount of clients this week. I'm doing pretty good. But if you monitor these numbers on a weekly basis, A, it keeps your intake person accountable to actually going through the process, which I'm going to show you next. And B, when these numbers start to slip, you can manipulate them. So let me just give you an example of a few manipulations. Let's just say that our booking rate is low and we're having a good amount of MQLs come in. Well, then we should text these people, we should email these people, and we should call them. And we'll get more people on the phone and more people will book. And we're going to do it faster than we were before. So as soon as the lead comes in through our contact form, we're calling that person. Now, let's just say that our show rate is low. Are they getting text reminders from software like Calendly? Calendly does this automatically. It will email them and text them reminders. Let's just say you're sending them 1 reminder. Well, let's get a little more aggressive. Let's send them 3 reminders, 24 hours before, 4 hours before, 1 hour before. And if you really want to go crazy, do it 5 minutes before. And ideally, they either show up or they reschedule with you back on your calendar. Either way, that's going to help your show rate. And then your closing rate. So let's say that you're not closing as good as you could be. I don't like to tweak sales scripts. I don't think that I'm an attorney and I'm qualified to teach you how to sell your subject matter expert. But what I will say is if you just follow up with people after the consult, you'll probably close higher. So most of this is focused on pre-consult follow-up, but after they've attended, are you emailing them, calling them, texting them, emailing, calling them, texting them? Because at that point in their pipeline, they're even more valuable to you because they know how much you cost and they already attended a consult. That's like the hottest lead you're going to get other than a referral who said, I want to hire you. So again, closing rate can be heavily manipulated by how much are you following up with these leads. All right. So this is the scorecard. Does anybody have any questions about that? If you do, put them in the question thing. The scorecard is a huge piece of managing this person, making sure that they're hitting their KPIs and making sure that we're on track for our revenue. So if you're not using a scorecard and you're looking to like beef up your sales process, I highly recommend you use a scorecard because it's going to keep everybody accountable and it's black and white, right? So if all these numbers look atrocious, it's like, oh, well, this is my fault. I need to step my game up. If all of them look great, everybody's happy. We're all winning, right? Everybody's in the right place. So now what I want to show you guys is a pipeline here. And this is just the CRM software that we give to our clients, but every CRM is going to have a pipeline. Your Lawmatics, your Clios, all of them will have pipelines that look like this. And pipelines are, somebody said, please repeat the pre-appointment reminder time. So for myself on my Calendly, I actually do 24 hours, 4 hours, and I think 1 hour. And if you want to go crazy, you could do 5 minutes. Kind of like I did for this webinar. Everybody, if you put your mobile number in there, you got one for as soon as you signed up, you got one 24 hours, you got one, I think 1 hour and 5 minutes before. So 4 different text messages, what I sent out for this webinar. If you put your mobile phone number in there, you probably got those reminders. All right, so this software here, again, this is our CRM that we provide to our clients, and this is what a pipeline looks like. And I want to teach you the principles behind a pipeline, and you can set this up as custom as you want it. But generally, how pipelines work is the person has to take an action in order for them to make it to a stage. That way, it's not on me to create the actions. So what I mean by that is they have to take the initiation. They have to become a new lead. They have to book the consultation. They have to show up to the consultation. They have to sign, and then they have to pay. It's not in my court because unfortunately in sales, the ball is not really in my court. We're always waiting on them to close, right? So the way I have this set up is in a few different stages. We have the new lead stage. So every lead that comes into the firm goes into this stage. Now, when I say we want this stage to be clean, the reason we want this stage to be clean is we're trying to move everybody to the right. If we pretend that this is a fun game that we play, which is how I visualize it, I'm trying to move everybody to the right of my pipeline in the payment stage. So the new lead stage, our only goal here is to call Ron Weasley, email Ron Weasley, and text Ron Weasley until we determine, is he a marketing qualified lead? Now, again, how we determine that is Ron he has a DUI and he's in our jurisdiction. All right. So everybody's happy. Now Ron is in the marketing qualified lead stage. All right. The next point that we need to move him to is either we need to disqualify him, but we already determined he has a DUI, he's in our jurisdiction, or we move him here and we try and get him to book a consultation. So let's just say that Ron fits all the criteria. We're happy. We're going to book Ron for a consultation. Now he's in our consult book stage. Now from here, once Ron attends his consultation, we're going to move him over here to the consult attended stage. Now at this point, you can either have the salesperson follow up with Ron, or if you don't have the staff for that necessarily, the intake person can go back and manage Ron's follow-ups through your email or through the law office's email, however you guys want to do it. But now all you're doing is you're saying, hey, Ron, hope you enjoyed your consultation. Do you have any questions for us? Are you ready to move forward? You're just kind of bothering him to move forward pretty much. And you're doing this every other day. If you're really aggressive, you could do it every day. So I typically, when my leads are in this stage, I do it every other day, right? So for those of you who are clients in here, you've probably got emails from me that said, hey, just checking in. How are things going? Are you guys ready to move forward? Hey, are you still interested? Hey, how's it going? Just want to see how things are going. Do you have any questions for me? Generic emails, right? I'm just asking how things are going. I'm not being super invasive and I'm not being super pushy. That's just my selling style. Other people are super aggressive and they're like, hey, are you still alive? That type of thing. I don't really do that. I don't like that. But again, everybody has their own style, and I will say some of that is very effective. But at the consult attended stage, we're now just doing soft follow-ups, right? Maybe a phone call, maybe an email, maybe a text, and you can kind of switch those cadences around. So one day you can do an email, the next day you can do a call, the next day you can do a text, and then you start that cycle over again. And you could do that for several weeks. You could even do it for several months, depending on your sales cycle. So like if you're in estate planning, right, and it's going to take some time to close this person, maybe you're following up that person for 3 months before you end up killing that lead. So once you're done with that, you're going to move Ron Weasley to the contract sign stage, and then Ron Weasley signs and pays, and boom, we're super happy. We made money. So this is what the pipeline looks like. Now, a couple of things about the pipeline. If you're a salesperson or an intake person managing the whole flow, I generally like to start on the right-hand side of the pipeline. So all the people in my contract sign stage, I follow up with them first. The reason I do that is because those are the people closest to making me money. So I want to hit my most valuable leads first, because the more time that goes by, the more time or the more likely that sale is to die. So time, it's funny. I talked to a guy the other day. He's like, time literally kills everything. It kills people and it kills deals. So we want to follow with these leads as many times as possible in the shortest time frame as possible without being obnoxious. So we start at the right-hand side of the pipeline, contract signed, because what this is going to do is going to work our hottest leads first. Then we're going to go to the consult attended stage. We're going to work these leads first or second, because we're going to ask them, hey, are you ready to move forward? Do you want us to send out a contract, et cetera, right? You get the idea. In the consult book stage, if you're doing extra credit, you can work those leads 24 hours before their appointment and call them and say, hey, I just want to make sure you're going to show up to your appointment because we have a spot saved for you. And again, that is heavily extra credit, but the sales organizations that do that, they close higher for sure. I personally don't do that because generally law firms have intake people answering the phone and they don't like it when marketing companies call. So I don't call you guys before your appointment. But if you guys gave me your cell phone numbers, I would probably call you. So that's the consult book stage. You can keep that stage kind of blank if you have Calendly that's already following up for you and reminding them. But again, if you want to do extra credit and your intake person is like a serious go-getter and they get paid for people who show up to their consultation, then they may go through and call them. Then you're going to work your marketing qualified leads. So let's just say that you've determined that the person has a DUI and they're in your jurisdiction, but they didn't want to book a consult, right? They just weren't ready for it yet. We're going to work that person, try them on the calendar. And then we go to our new lead stage. And everybody in the new lead stage, we're going to call them, see if they're qualified, move them over, or disqualify them. So every single day when your intake person leaves the office, this new lead stage should be cleared, meaning they got a hold of everybody. They either disqualified them or they moved them over to marketing qualified lead. Maybe they didn't book yet, but we know that they're actually qualified to work with us, and we're going to try and book them as soon as possible. So that is what the pipeline flow looks like. And if you work your pipeline like this every day, it doesn't take that long, especially once you get into a flow of it. You will close so much higher. Like literally some people who do this, when they start doing it, they'll close double or triple the leads that come into their firm. And most of you have a lot of leads coming into your firm that you might not even realize are there because they're not being organized in this fashion. So again, this is a super powerful way to manage the pipeline. It's very, very simple because it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes, right? So a pipeline that looks like this, going to take about 2 minutes to follow up with all these people, unless you're getting into long conversations. Then it might take a little longer. But going through these leads for Steve Rogers, I'm going to email him, text him, call him, boom, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and I'm done. And now I'm starting to get way more sales through my pipeline. So that's the process that I personally go through for my pipeline. I do it every single day. Like I said, it's not very fun, but it works very, very well. And I never lose sight of a lead because they're all in my pipeline. And then if they're not qualified, I mark them as lost and they disappear. So I'll just show you what that looks like. Let's just say John Jones attended my consult and I didn't like John Jones because I don't want to work with him. I mark him as lost. And now he's out of my pipeline. No more mental capital on John Jones. And now I can focus on my leads that I want to move over to my sold stage. All right, so that's the process for managing the pipeline. Those are the implications for an intake person. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I really appreciate all of your time. It's 1:30. I wanted to end on the 30-minute mark so you guys can get back to your day. If you guys have any questions about this, you can always respond to the email that I send the recording out to. And if you want the Google sheet that I was using, I will put it in the email, and I'll also drop it in the free Facebook group if you're not in there already. All right, if you have questions, you can drop them below. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Hopefully it was helpful for all of you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.